You have been told that manifestation is a matter of mind over matter. You have optimized, strategized, and disciplined your thoughts, treating your life like a project to be managed. But if your mind is the perfect CEO, why does your body feel like a terrified intern, constantly on the verge of collapse? The truth is, your mind's commands are being vetoed by a much older, more powerful intelligence. This story is your introduction to that intelligence. Your nervous system. It will reveal why true manifestation is not a mental strategy, but a biological reset. And it will give you a simple, practical, 7-minute daily protocol to perform that reset. By the end of this journey, you will stop trying to manage your reality and finally start embodying it. Gabriela was the architect of a life she couldn't inhabit. At 33, she was a brilliant software engineer, a rising star in Rio's burgeoning tech scene, celebrated for her ability to create elegant, logical, and ruthlessly efficient systems. Her life was her most complex project. She tracked her sleep cycles, her nutrient intake, and her productivity metrics with a devotion that bordered on religious. She had a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan, and a daily schedule broken down into 15-minute increments. She had applied this same logical rigor to manifestation, creating vision boards that were as detailed as engineering schematics and affirmations that were as precise as lines of code. Her one, all-consuming desire was to create something that would actually help people, not just optimize their data. She dreamed of developing her own app, a project she secretly called Cementi, Seed. It would be a wellness app that went beyond tracking steps and calories, one that would integrate mindfulness, nature, and creativity. It was a dream of integration, of wholeness, of a life that felt as lush and vibrant as the Tijuca forest she could see from her high-rise window. But her own body was a fortress against this dream. Her antagonist was her own biohacking mind, the part of her that viewed her physical self as a machine to be controlled and upgraded. It was a relentless optimizer that had completely lost touch with the machine's operator, her soul. Every time she allowed herself to dream of Cementi, to feel the expansive, unpredictable joy of creation, her body would revolt. Her heart would start to hammer, a cold, electric dread would flood her veins, and her breath would become a shallow, panicked gasp. Her mind would say, create a revolutionary wellness app, but her nervous system, trapped in a chronic state of high alert, would scream, warning. Unknown variable detected. System instability imminent. Abort. Abort. The result was a permanent state of analysis paralysis, a life lived entirely in the planning stage. Is she a prisoner of her own sophisticated mind, her dreams forever locked in a cage of logic and control? Or is there a simpler, more ancient protocol, one that speaks the forgotten language of the body and can finally grant her the biological permission to create? If you have ever felt like your own body is sabotaging your best intentions, subscribe. This story contains the user manual you've been searching for. Gabriela's meticulously crafted system finally crashed. One Tuesday afternoon, during a high-pressure meeting where she was presenting a flawless, data-driven strategy, the internal alarm system went into a full-blown meltdown. This was the closing of the previous loop. The low-grade anxiety had escalated into an undeniable physical event. The world dissolved into a tunnel of buzzing static. Her heart didn't just race, it felt like it was trying to break out of her chest. She managed to excuse herself, stumbling into a bathroom where she collapsed onto the cold tile floor, gasping for air. It was not a panic attack in the psychological sense, it was a complete physiological short-circuit. Her company-mandated doctor ran a battery of tests, all of which came back normal. It's stress, Gabriela, the doctor said, a phrase she had always despised for its lack of precision. Your system is in a state of chronic overload. I'm signing you off for a month of medical leave. My prescription? Stop looking at screens. Go for a walk. A long one. For Gabriela, this was like telling a fish to take up mountain climbing. It was a useless, undata-driven suggestion. But she was desperate. She decided to take the doctor's advice literally, if only to prove its absurdity. She drove to the entrance of the Tijuca National Forest, the vast, chaotic wilderness that sprawled through the city. She, who lived in a world of straight lines and right angles, was immediately overwhelmed. The forest was a riot of sensory information. The humid smell of damp earth and decaying leaves, the cacophony of unseen insects and birds, the dizzying, fractal patterns of light filtering through the dense canopy. It was nature's source code, and it was too complex for her to parse. Her nervous system, craving order, felt assaulted. It was on a small, overgrown path, far from the main tourist trail, that she saw her. An old woman with skin like wrinkled leather and a cascade of long, silver-white hair, tending to a small, hidden garden of herbs. She moved with a slow, deliberate grace that seemed to be in perfect rhythm with the forest itself. There was a profound sense of peace around her, a field of coherence that was the complete antithesis of Gabriela's inner static. This was Dona Inés, a local curandera, a healer who practiced the ancient, plant-based wisdom of her ancestors. Gabriela, flustered and out of her element, tried to ask for directions back to the main path. Dona Inés looked up from her work, and her dark, knowing eyes seemed to scan Gabriela's entire energy field in a single glance. "You are not lost in the forest, child," she said, her voice a low, melodic hum, like the forest itself. "You are lost in your own head. Your body has forgotten the song of the earth." Gabriela, accustomed to being the smartest person in any room, was disarmed by the woman's simple, profound accuracy. She found herself talking, the words tumbling out, the job, the dream, the anxiety, the feeling of being a ghost in her own life. Dona Inés listened patiently. When Gabriela finished, the old woman wiped her earthy hands on her apron and gestured to the ground. "Your mind is a good branch," she said. "But you have forgotten your roots. The mind cannot heal the body. Only the body can heal the body. It begins not here," she said, tapping her temple, "but here," she finished, stomping her bare foot softly on the rich, dark soil. "I will give you a protocol. Not for your mind. For your roots. But it is very simple. Your clever mind will tell you it is foolish." She has stumbled upon an ancient, embodied wisdom, a guide who offers a solution that defies all modern logic. Can a woman who trusts only in complex data learn a protocol rooted in the simple, profound intelligence of the earth itself? Dona Inés did not overwhelm Gabriela with information. She gave her only the first 2 steps of what she called the Protocolo Terracoriceo, the Earth Heart Protocol. "For the next week," she instructed, "you will do only this every morning. First, you will go outside, take off your shoes, and for 2 full minutes, you will simply stand on the earth. Grass, dirt, sand. No concrete. You will feel the ground beneath your feet. That is all. Second, you will breathe. For 2 minutes, you will breathe in for a count of 4, and out for a count of 6. The out-breath must be longer than the in-breath. This is not a suggestion. It is a command to the frightened animal in your body. It tells it, you are safe. The danger has passed." Gabriela returned to her apartment feeling a strange mix of hope and extreme skepticism. This closed the previous loop. She had found her mentor and received her first, simple instructions. The new loop of conflict began the very next morning at sunrise. She went to the small, manicured lawn of her luxury apartment complex, a place she had only ever walked across, never stood upon. She slipped off her expensive running shoes and placed her bare feet on the cool, damp grass. It felt alien. Her immediate impulse was to analyze. Her biohacking mind kicked into high gear. This is unscientific. What is the precise mechanism of grounding? Is it about ion exchange? What is the optimal duration? 2 minutes seems arbitrary. I should be tracking my heart rate variability. The 2 minutes felt like an eternity of mental resistance. Then she tried the breathing. As she consciously extended her exhalations, a wave of profound fatigue washed over her. It wasn't sleepiness, it was the feeling of a system that had been running on adrenaline for a decade finally being given permission to power down. It was deeply uncomfortable. The quiet her mind had been craving was now a terrifying void, and all the suppressed emotions she had been outrunning began to surface. She didn't feel peaceful. She felt raw, vulnerable, and exhausted. She did this every morning for a week, and every morning it was a battle. She was failing. The simple protocol was the hardest thing she had ever done. The external conflict arrived, as it always did, through her laptop. It was an email from Kenji Tanaka, her former mentor from a Silicon Valley startup where she had worked for 2 years. He was a tech visionary she had always admired, a man whose mind operated at 1,000 miles an hour. He had just secured series of funding for his new venture, a company using AI to create fully optimized human potential protocols. Gabby, the email read, I want you to be my head of product. We're not just building apps, we're building the future of humanity. It's a crazy ride, high stress, high reward. It's everything we've ever talked about. I need you in California in a month. The offer was a siren song. It was a return to the world of data, of optimization, of quantifiable success. A world where she was competent, celebrated, and understood. A world that made sense. She told Dona Inés about the offer during her next visit to the forest. The old woman was weeding a patch of mint and didn't look up. The frightened animal always runs back to the cage it knows, she said, her words echoing those of a long-ago capoeira master. It mistakes the cage for safety. Your work is not to build a better cage. It is to convince the animal that the forest is safe. She is being offered the keys to a kingdom of logic and control, the very world she is a master of. Yet, a quiet, difficult path is opening up, one that promises not control, but a terrifying and profound sense of safety. How can she possibly choose this frustrating, unproven protocol over the pinnacle of her life's ambition? Gabriela's month of medical leave became a crucible. The deadline to give her mentor, Kenji, an answer about the California job cast a long shadow over her days, creating a constant, throbbing pressure. This closed the loop of her initial struggle and opened a new one, filled with emotional and philosophical dilemmas. The most potent subtrauma was her daily visit to Dona Inés's small, rustic home on the edge of the forest. The visits were no longer just for instruction. Dona Inés, seeing Gabriela's struggle, began giving her simple, physical tasks to do. She had Gabriela help her weed the herb garden, turn the compost, and grind medicinal leaves with a heavy stone pestle. For Gabriela, whose hands were used to the smooth, cold surface of a keyboard, the feeling of soil under her fingernails, the friction of stone on stone, was a revelation. It was a wordless teaching. Her body was engaging in rhythmic, grounding, meaningful work. This was a stark contrast to her phone calls with Kenji, who spoke excitedly about frictionless user experiences and eliminating inefficiencies in the human machine. One afternoon, while they were sorting dried chamomile flowers, Gabriela confessed her deep frustration. I don't feel like I'm manifesting anything, Inés. I'm just standing on the grass and breathing. It feels like I'm doing nothing. Dona Inés paused, holding a fragrant flower to her nose. You are not trying to manifest a thing, she said, her wisdom simple and profound. You are trying to manifest a state of safety. From that state, all things can grow. You cannot force a seed to sprout by shouting at it. You must give it good soil, water, and sun. You are tending to your own soil. This conversation became a turning point in Gabriela's understanding. She had been trying to manifest the fruit while ignoring the health of the tree. Her friendship with her colleague, Pedro, in Rio provided another layer of complexity. Pedro was a brilliant coder and a kind soul who was also deeply burnt out by the corporate tech world. He was the only person she confided in about her strange new protocol. He was skeptical but also deeply curious. It sounds crazy, Gabby, he said over coffee. But you look calmer. The static is gone from your eyes. He represented a bridge, a part of her old world that had the potential to understand her new one. He was watching her experiment, his own future perhaps hanging in the balance of her results. The pressure from Kenji's offer was immense. It was not just a job, it was an entire reality, a pre-packaged identity of success and innovation. It was a world that valued her mind above all else. But every day she spent with Dona Inés, every moment she spent with her hands in the earth, she felt a quiet, powerful shift happening in her body. The choice was becoming less about logic and more about a feeling, a deep, cellular resonance. She is being pulled between two powerful visions of the future, one that promises to optimize her mind, and one that promises to heal her body. With the deadline only a week away, what final piece of the protocol, what undeniable biological experience, will give her the clarity to choose her own authentic path? It was the final week of her medical leave. The deadline from Kenji was 3 days away. The internal conflict was at its peak. Gabriela felt as though she were standing on a cliff edge, with the safe, familiar territory of her past on one side and a vast, unknown ocean on the other. She went to see Dona Ines, her mind a tangled knot of pro and con lists. "I have to make a decision," she said, her voice strained. "My mind has an answer, but my body doesn't." Dona Ines nodded slowly. The loop of Gabriela's agonizing indecision was about to be closed for good. "It is time for the rest of the protocol," she said. "You have tended to the roots and the breath. Now, we must add the heart and the voice." She led Gabriela to a small, sun-dappled clearing behind her house. "For the next 3 minutes of the protocol, you will add these," she instructed. "First, 1 minute of sound. You will place your hands on your heart, and you will hum. A low, steady hum, like a bee. You are not trying to sing a song. You are trying to feel the vibration inside your own chest. You are telling every cell in your body, with a frequency, not a thought, 'I am here. I am safe.' Then," she continued, "for the final minute, you will do the hardest thing of all. You will feel gratitude. But not for the things you want. You will find one sensation in your body, right now, that is pleasant, and you will put all of your attention on it. The feeling of the sun on your skin. The feeling of a deep breath in your lungs. The feeling of your own strong heart beating. You will thank your body for this one, simple, real feeling of being alive and safe in this moment." This was it. The complete 7-minute Earth Heart Protocol. Minutes 1 to 2, grounding. Bare feet on the earth. Minutes 3 to 4, safety breathing. Exhale longer than inhale. Minute 5, heart vibration. Humming with hands on heart. Minute 6, somatic gratitude. Focusing on a pleasant physical sensation. Minute 7, integration. Standing in silence, feeling the new state, Dona Ines guided her through it right there. Gabriela felt foolish at first, humming like a child. But then she felt it. The vibration starting in her chest, a gentle, resonant purr that spread through her entire torso, loosening knots of tension she didn't even know she had. It was a physical signal of safety that bypassed her analytical mind completely. Then, during the somatic gratitude, she focused on the feeling of the warm Rio sun on her forearms. She poured her attention into that simple, real sensation. And in that moment, the quantum shift happened. The war between her mind and her body ended. They dropped into a state of profound coherence. The constant, low-grade static of anxiety she had lived with her entire life was gone. In its place was a deep, calm, resonant silence. It was the feeling of being completely, utterly, and safely at home in her own skin. A thought from Dr. Joe Dispenza, a man whose work she had previously dismissed as unscientific, became her living reality. The body literally is the subconscious mind. You have to get out of the analytical mind and into the operating system. She had finally accessed the operating system. And from that state of deep coherence, the vision for her app, Cementi, didn't just appear. It downloaded, fully formed, a gift from her own healed biology. She saw the user interface, not as a series of metrics, but as a beautiful, interactive garden. She saw its core function, guiding users through the 7-minute protocol. The app wasn't about biohacking. It was about bioharmony. She has the protocol. She has experienced the reset. She has received the vision. This is the key. But how will she use this key to unlock a future that just yesterday seemed impossible? What happens when this new, embodied coherence meets the demands of her old, logical world? This profound biological reset has resonated with you? Subscribe for more stories that provide practical tools for your own transformation. The experience in the clearing was a biological rebirth. Gabriela walked back down the forest path not as a software engineer, but as an integrated human being. The previous loop closed. She had the protocol and the vision. Now, she had to act from this new state of being. Her first action was to call Kenji in California. The conversation was calm, clear, and for her, completely without conflict. She thanked him for his belief in her but explained that she was staying in Brazil to pursue a new project, one that was focused on bioharmony rather than biohacking. Kenji was baffled. "Gabby, harmony doesn't get you venture capital funding," he argued, his voice a mix of frustration and concern. "We're talking about legacy work here, the chance to shape the future of human evolution." "I think the future of evolution is learning to be human first," she replied gently. The words came from a place of deep knowing, not intellectual argument. The call ended with him wishing her luck, but with the clear subtext that he believed she was throwing her career away for some spiritual fantasy. The door to her old life had closed, not with a slam, but with a quiet, decisive click. The consequences of this choice were immediate. She was officially unemployed and untethered from the global tech industry that had defined her identity for a decade. The fear, the ghost of her old programming, tried to surface. But now, she had a tool. The 7-minute Earth-Heart protocol was no longer an experiment, it was her daily, non-negotiable practice. Every morning, she would go to the beach, perform the protocol, and consciously set her biological state for the day. She was not trying to control her thoughts, she was conditioning her body to a new emotional baseline. She began to map out the architecture for Cementi. But her process was completely transformed. She didn't start with flowcharts and data structures. She started with feeling. She would do the protocol, enter that state of coherence, and then ask, what does the user need to feel at this stage? The design flowed from this state of embodied empathy. It was intuitive, elegant, and profoundly human. She reached out to her old colleague Pedro, the one who had seen the change in her eyes. She showed him her initial designs. He was captivated. "Gabby," he said, his voice full of an excitement she hadn't heard from him in years. "This is not just an app. This is a medicine. I don't know how you're going to build it, but I have to be a part of it." He quit his job 2 weeks later to become her co-founder.
She has made the leap, severing her past and recruiting her first ally. She has the vision and the protocol, a powerful combination. But they have no money, no resources, and not and beyond the two of them. Can a business built on a foundation of feeling and biological coherence actually survive the harsh, competitive landscape of the tech world? The first 6 months of developing Cementi were a masterclass in living the protocol. Gabriela and Pedro bootstrapped the project, working out of her apartment, their passion fueled by her savings and his. This was the ultimate test premised in the last chapter, the long, unglamorous marathon of creation, where the initial moment must be sustained through daily discipline and unwavering fight. There were countless moments of doubt. A complex coding problem would arise. A crucial piece of software would be too expensive. The sheer scale of what they were trying to accomplish would feel overwhelming. In these moments, Gabriela's old patterns, her biohacking mind, would try to take over, screaming for them to work longer hours, to cut corners, to compromise the vision for the sake of efficiency. This was the true battle. Gabriela consolidated her growth by making the 7-minute protocol the official start to their workday. Every morning, before a single line of code was written, she and Pedro would go to the lawn outside, take off their shoes, and do the protocol together. It was a radical act in the tech world. They were prioritizing their collective nervous system regulation above all else. They were making their state of being the most important project metric. The results were astonishing. When they approached a problem from a state of calm and coherence, the solutions would appear with an ease that felt magical. A frustrating bug would suddenly reveal its simple cause. A conversation with another developer at a local coffee shop would lead to an open-source tool that solved their expensive software problem. They were not just building an app, they were building a coherent energetic field around their project, and this field was attracting synchronicities and solutions. Their growth was not measured in sleepless nights and hassle, but in the steady, joyful, and sustainable progress of their work. They had created a bioharmonious company culture before they even had a company. They have created a functional, beautiful beta version of Cemente, a testament to their new way of working. Their process is their proof. But a product is nothing without users and a path to market. How will they get their creation into the hands of the people who need it, and will the world be receptive to a technology built on the quiet wisdom of the body? The beta version of Cemente was finished. It was elegant, intuitive, and it worked. The 7-minute guided protocol was the core of the experience, and early tests with a small group of friends showed a measurable decrease in their reported stress levels. The loop of their salutary creation was closed. Now, the new loop opened, they needed to launch. This meant funding. It meant pitching to investors. It meant entering the very world of pressure, data-driven analysis that Gabriela had left behind. The fear was palpable. They were two unknown developers in Rio with a meditation app in a market that was already saturated. Their unique selling proposition wasn't a novel technology, it was a feeling, a state of being. How could they possibly convey that in a PowerPoint presentation? The old panic threatened to resurface. Gabriela felt a familiar tightening in her chest, the ghost of her past anxiety. But this time, she had her tools. She and Pedro used the protocol not used as a morning routine, but as a strategic preparation for this new challenge. Before every session of working on their pitch deck, they would ground, breathe, and They designed their presentation from a state of coherence. The result was a pitch deck unlike any other. It was light on aggressive growth projections and heavy on the signs of the nervous system. It told a story. It was an invitation, not a demand. Through a friend from the community garden, they managed to secure a meeting. Not with a traditional tech venture capital firm, but with a new, progressive investment group called Regenera Capital. They were known for backing sustainable, triple bottom line businesses in Brazil, companies that were good for profit, people, and the planet. The meeting was their one shot. The tension was not the frantic, chaotic energy of a startup launch. It was the calm, focused, powerful energy of a seed about to break through the soil. The meeting is set. The pitch is ready. Their entire future, and the future of their creation, rests on this one presentation. Can they successfully transmit the feeling of their app to a room of skeptical investors? Can a 7-minute protocol change the minds of the people who control the flow of capital? The offices of Regenera Capital were beautiful and filled with natural light, but the boardroom still had the unmistakable energy of power and money. 3 partners sat at alone, polished wooden table, a sharp, analytical woman, a seasoned, paternalistic man, and a younger, more intense partner. Gabriela and Pedro took their seats, the contrast between their simple, calm energy and the corporate power in the room palpable. Gabriela began to speak. She told her story. She told the story of her burnout, of Donna Inés, of the protocol. She explained the signs of the nervous system, the vagus nerve, and the art coherence with a clarity and passion that was captivating. But as she spoke, she could see the skepticism in their eyes. They were listening, but they were not feeling. They were processing her words as data. The younger, more aggressive partner interrupted her. This is a compelling story, Dr. Visser. But the wellness app market is a bloodbath. Your user acquisition cost will be astronomical. What is your proprietary technology? What is the barrier to entry? I don't see an defensible moat here. This was the moment. The ultimate challenge from the world of logic. The old Gabriela would have launched into a defensive, data-filled battle. Her nervous system would have flooded with cortisol. But she had prepared for this. She took a slow, deep breath. You are right, she said, her calm completely unruffled. Our moat is not in the code. It is in the code of the human body. Our proprietary technology is a 400,000-year-old operating system. It's difficult to describe the effect. It's better to feel it. She looked directly at the 3 partners. I know this is unusual. But I am not going to show you another slide. Instead, I ask you to give me and yourselves 1 minute. Before they could object, she began to guide them. Please, place your feet flat on the floor. Close
your eyes, if you are comfortable. Now, place a hand on your heart. A flicker of annoyance crossed the partners' faces, but they were so surprised by her audacity that they complied. "We are going to hum," she said softly. "Like a bee. For just 30 seconds. Join me." She began to hum, a low, steady vibration. After a moment's hesitation, Pedro joined in. Then, miraculously, one by one, the investors started to hum, their voices awkward at first, then surrendering to the strange, simple act. The energy in the room shifted instantly. The tension dissolved. The air softened. When the 30 seconds were over, she said, "Now, just for a moment, feel the vibration in your own chest. Feel your own heart beating." There was a profound silence in the room. The senior partner opened his eyes first. He looked not at the presentation on the screen, but at Gabriela. And he was smiling. "In 20 years of hearing pitches," he said, his voice softer than before, "no one has ever done that. I don't need to see your financial projections. I felt the product. This is not just an app. This is a new way of doing business." The promise of the introduction was fulfilled. The manifestation was not the result of a thought. It was the result of a reset, a biological transmission of safety and coherence that was more powerful than any data point. They have done the impossible. They have manifested their funding by changing the biological state of the investors. The seed is planted. But what kind of garden will grow from such a revolutionary act? Cementi launched 9 months later and became a word-of-mouth phenomenon. In a sea of apps that demanded more from their users, more data, more engagement, more optimization, Cementi was an oasis. It asked for only 7 minutes a day, and in return, it gave people back to themselves. Its success was built on its profound authenticity. The app was not just a product. It was a transmission of the calm, coherent energy that Gabriela and Pedro had infused into every line of code. Gabriela's life was unrecognizable from the one she had lived just 2 years prior. She was the CEO of a thriving, purpose-driven company, but she was not a girl boss who hustled 80 hours a week. She was a gardener CEO. Her primary job, as she saw it, was to tend to the nervous system of her company. The 7-minute protocol was a non-negotiable part of their company culture. Their office in Rio became a famous hub of conscious, sustainable innovation. She honored her roots. A significant portion of the company's profits went to a foundation she created to protect the Tijuca forest and to support indigenous healers like Dona Inés, preserving the ancient wisdom that had saved her life. She had not just built a successful company, she had created a regenerative ecosystem. Her manifestation was not a single, static object, an app, but a living, breathing and evolving reality of well-being for herself, her employees, and her users. She had learned the ultimate lesson: the universe does not respond to the frantic signals of our thinking mind. It responds to the deep, resonant, coherent broadcast of a regulated and peaceful nervous system. Her personal reset has created a ripple effect, changing the landscape of her industry and her community. She has mastered the art of embodied creation. But what is the next frontier for a soul who has learned to build realities from the frequency of safety? We see Gabriela a year later, not in a boardroom, but sitting on the earth in the hidden garden of Dona Inés. The old healer is frail now, but her eyes are bright. They are not talking about business. They are watching a hummingbird, a creature whose wings beat at an impossible speed, yet it can remain perfectly still in the air. "You see, child," Dona Inés says softly, "the power is not in the speed. It is in the center. You have found your center." Gabriela smiles, a look of profound peace on her face. She has come home. She learned that the most complex problems could be solved not by a better algorithm, but by a simpler breath. What chaos in your life is waiting for the simple, profound reset of your own nervous system? The power to change your reality is not in your thoughts. It is in your body, waiting to be unlocked. You do not need to wait for a moment of crisis or a trip to a forest. You can begin right now. I invite you to try just 1 minute of the protocol. Place your feet on the floor. Place a hand on your heart. And for 60 seconds, just hum. Feel the vibration. Give your body a direct, physical signal of safety. This is the first step. This is the reset. How did that 1 minute feel? Share your experience in the comments below. Let's create a collective field of coherence, right here, right now. For more stories that give you practical, body-based tools to manifest the life you deserve, make sure you subscribe and join this community of embodied creators.